Warriors, rise! Why the US dollar could collapse and very soon. I'm going to take you on a journey. Nothing to be worried about because as you look this way, there's always another narrative going on this way. And if you know the game, you can't be played. My name is Coach JB. I am the top health, mindset, and crypto coach in the world. Remember, what you believe in your heart, you think in your mind will eventually become your words and become your reality. If you can see it in your mind, eventually you can hold it right here in your hands. What you repeatedly do gets ingrained in your subconscious mind. What gets ingrained in your subconscious mind becomes an unconscious activity. And Warriors, if you have not jumped into the Warrior Academy, jump in now. www.3twarrior.com. Full support as we move into the quantum financial system, 7 calls per week, access to my portfolio, exit strategy, and the most amazing community supporting each other as we go into this quantum financial system. Let's dive right into this, Warriors. You came here to get motivated, you came here to get inspired, and you came here to learn what is happening in the greatest time in history. For some people, this will be the greatest time in history, and for some, this will be the worst time in history. Now, as I take you through this, Warriors, this is hours and hours and hours, thousands of hours of research, just connecting the dots, looking at the problem and reverse engineering it backwards. I highly recommend you look up Ray Dalio and study his information, one of the top economists and also one of the top hedge funds in the world that is moving into cryptocurrency. Warren Buffett is not exposed to cryptocurrency, but he is invested in Nubank, $1 billion cryptocurrency friendly company. Also has top stake in Bank of America, which is connected to Ripple. They are all moving to assets, Warriors. And here is why. We are moving to a new monetary system. A currency usually has a lifespan of over 100 years. America is way over its lifespan. And since, if you watched my video last Monday, okay, I broke down from the petrodollar all the way to now. Please go watch the video last Monday. Okay, I break down for you exactly what I'm talking about, and then boom, the news comes out confirming what I said. Okay, so this is back in 2019. I want to take you guys back, and we'll go through these timelines, right? So we can really connect the dots. So 2019, our lives are completely normal. We're going along, a little bit of peace and prosperity since 2008. People are starting to recover a little bit from the crisis, and then all of a sudden they do a pandemic response drill as we're sitting there getting ready for the holidays. And this is what's happening as well. And then by March 2020, your whole life is flipped upside down. Problem, reaction, solution. As you look this way, they change the narrative this way. A growing club of very powerful countries is steering away from the US dollar. This was in 2019, October. The drill was done in October, and by March, we were in a pandemic. The US dollar has been the world's major reserve currency for decades, but the status could come under threat as very powerful countries seek to undermine its importance, warned Ann Coren of the Institute Analysis of Global Security. Coren says China, Russia, and EU are some major movers behind this push. That was 2019. We fast forward to this news article, this news clip, March 15th, 2022. And let's listen to what they say about the US dollar.
The Biden administration mismanaged American leadership around the world. Well, here's one very significant indicator. The Saudi kingdom, Saudi Arabia, reportedly considering accepting Chinese currency instead of US dollars for its oil sales to China. This would be a huge change. For almost 50 years, Saudi Arabia has traded oil exclusively in US dollars, and that has been a massive boon to the United States. According to the Wall Street Journal, which broke this story, the Chinese...
Okay, so that's huge to pay attention to. Remember, I taught you, since 1971, more money's been printed in history, and especially since Bitcoin's inception, okay? And the reason why we've maintained dominance is because of all oil is traded in dollars. That was protection for the Saudis. So that was set up before they detached from the gold standard so they could print money and put us into debt-based society, enslave us, and then move the monetary system.
Government is, quote, offering everything you could possibly imagine to the Saudis. What would this mean for the United States? Elbridge Colby is a former Pentagon official. He's also a principal at the Marathon Initiative. We're happy to have him join us tonight. Bridge, thanks so much for coming on. So we didn't want to let this story pass. I think it's being ignored by a lot of people. It seemed like a major story to us. Is it?
Yeah, I think so, Tucker. And I think you're right to point to the dollar's role as central to our well-being in a very practical level. And I think what we're seeing is early indications of a movement towards probably two blocks, one led by us and one led by China. And that's going to have massive implications, especially if we're poorly organized. And I think the point that you're making, Tucker, which is absolutely right, is we need to be jealously and carefully thinking about this kind of crown jewel of the role of the dollar and just being very careful in how we use it. And I mean, the Saudis are a great example of poor foresight and strategic planning. The administration was very tough on the Saudis. And yes, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi was an abomination. But at the other, on the other hand, if you're going to end up needing them and asking them for help, maybe you should have think about how you approach them in the first place. And this is not the only example of that, where we need to take strategic account of the consequences and not be as solely focused on sort of moral posturing, if you will, and that's a classic example. And because otherwise we're not going to be thinking about what's in the long-term interest of the American people.
I mean, it feels like they're college sophomores. Like all they're capable of is a moral lecture. And I'm not against moralizing. We do it all the time. There are moral questions to solve. But if you're leading a country, shouldn't you put its interest at the top of your concerns? They don't seem to be.
Okay, so we'll leave it right there. So the major point of this, you can go watch the rest of it. It's just about bantering back and forth. And I agree with a lot of stuff, but we're not getting into politics. This is not about politics because remember, politics, money, politics. Left, right, up, down, it all has to do with money. It doesn't matter if it's left, doesn't matter if it's right. It all comes back to money and power. So don't get caught up in that left and right. Get caught up in the higher consciousness, bringing back God's money to the people. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So you heard what they talked about how dangerous this is. The Saudi, if oil start trading and accepted in other currencies, that is what connects the U.S. economy to the world. That means we start to lose our power in regards to the dominant currency. Now, check this out. On April 20th, 2022, you heard what he said? This was on March 15th, 2022. And sure enough, ironically, 1 month later, Israel adds China's yuan for the first time ever, while cutting its dollar holdings in the biggest currency reshuffle in a decade. Israel's central bank added the yuan to its reserves holdings for the first time ever. Previously, the bank only held U.S. dollars, euros, and the British pound, which are all connected. According to the IMF, the dollar's share of the total global currency reserves has fallen to its lowest point in over 2 decades. Wow. Right after this, conversation starts back in 2019. We go into a pandemic. Boom, we look this way. There's a whole digital narrative going on this way. They're mentioning it in March 2015 or March 15, 2022. Boom, we get this announcement on April 20th. Now Israel for the first time is adding the yuan to their dollar holdings. This was back in 2021. Okay. Russia said it will remove the dollar assets from its wealth fund. Ironically, Russia. And then we go into this Russia-Ukraine narrative. Okay. And I have some insights. I had some powerful insight that there'll be some more stuff coming in August, which will be interesting. Just keep an eye. We'll have another black swan looking this way. Okay. Let's dive into this. So we know that the US dollar, and I'll keep repeating a lot of the same things because what gets ingrained in your subconscious mind becomes an unconscious activity. The value of your dollar, remember, since we detached from the gold standard, a dollar from 2021 to 1971. Okay. $1 in 2021 is equivalent purchasing power to about 15.15 in 1971, an increase of negative 0.85 over 50 years. The dollar's had an average inflation rate of 3.87 per year between 1971 and 2021, producing a cumulative price increase of 85%. That's disgusting. Disgusting. Okay. So here's why we're in a very dangerous position and why people don't trust the US and why the US is losing its dominance. Okay. US gross domestic products at 24 trillion. I love looking at this on a daily basis. Our national debt is at 30 trillion. We're at 125% debt to income ratio. If you were at 125% debt to income ratio, you could not borrow. Okay, 1960s, before we detached from the gold standard, we're at 52. 1980s, we had a good run. We're at 34%. 2000 went to 58%. Ironically, that was during the dot-com and then the dot-com bubble. And since then, 2000 to now, we're at 125%. If we go into the time machine and we go to 2026, Your U.S. gross domestic product will only be at 27,000 trillion, and your debt will be at 41 trillion, which will put us at 150% debt to income ratio. So where are we heading? This is where we're heading, Warriors. This is where we're heading. Countries, banks, they're all moving to distributed ledger technology. They're moving to a new quantum financial system. I believe we'll be moving to some sort of global, probably financial system that'll move liquidity across the rails as fast as possible, getting everybody. It's called inclusive financing or even playing field. You're going to hear those words. They're going to put everybody on this monetary system. They're going to crush the middle class. We are moving to a China digital type world. In China, very, very rich and extremely poor. What's happening in America? Jerome Powell said, we are moving towards a new economy, leveraged towards technology. He is worried about the middle class. He said that last year, and then all of a sudden, who's being stressed now? The middle class. He predicted what was going to happen. Inflation's going up. House interest rates are going up. The normal average family cannot afford a house anymore. They can barely afford to eat. Guess what? We need to give you universal basic income so you can survive. And the only way we can do that is create the liquidity going, get access to debt, keep you buried in debt. Okay, liquidity. And this is how they're going to do it.
In China, all testing out the digital currencies. How are you gearing up for the disruption of money with central bank digital currencies? How will it change the way you and other banks operate in future?
Probably fundamentally, while we're not formally involved, no foreign banks are involved in the Chinese ECNY. I think we're as close to that as we can be to understand how that digital currency can be used for cross-border trade. Going back 5 years, we had digital currency underpinned trade finance and money settlement systems, and using as a medium of exchange, using things like Ripple's XRP, for example, as a medium to affect real-time cross-border payments. And we learn through each one of these pilots, and we realize that these things can be cheaper and faster with lower settlement risk, which is a good thing for the system. If the underlying currency that you're using as a medium of exchange is unstable, Bitcoin, for example, very volatile, as we know, although it's also big and liquid. Finding the trade-offs so that the system can actually be safer and cheaper and more effective, and at the same time, suitable for the user who doesn't want to take any market risk or operational risk along the way. I think we're still figuring that out. And I think that's the big use case.
Is it only a matter of time before you get into Bitcoin trading for your clients?
It is only a matter of time and regulatory forbearance. That's because right now,
boom, that's what the Ripple case is all about.
It's almost impossible for a bank to be a market maker in cryptocurrencies. The capital requirements, and let's just leave it at the capital requirements, are severe. So as a practical matter.
Okay, remember that statement, the capital requirements are severe, and then I'm going to dive into, from my knowledge, my brain picks all this stuff up. Remember, capital requirements are severe right now.
You could play around a little bit, but we couldn't service our clients. The Bitcoin market is also largely a retail market, and there are real both know your customer considerations, but also customer risk considerations.
Okay, so I want to dive into that. So he said you need massive capital requirements. That's how they keep the middle class out, right? The smaller banks out for now. That's why their wealthy clients, only the wealthy people, can invest in cryptocurrency on the big banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, right? But the middle class are screwed, right? They can't do that. So what they're doing is they're keeping out the middle class. They're pushing them into this retail environment. They're going to regulate it on the back end over here. And then boom, you're going to see massive regulation come in. They're going to provide rules for banks, and all the banks are going to come in and they're going to flood the marketplace into cryptocurrency. And we as investors are going to get very wealthy. And so are the hedge funds that dove into it early because they have the capital requirements, or the reason why I brought that is Silvergate, right? The bank that Macro Strategies is able to do a crypto-backed loan. Think about that. They're able to do that, but we can't do a crypto-backed loan at a regular traditional bank. Warriors, Put your thinking cap on, all right? So Brad Garlinghouse on April 22nd, 2022. Over the past couple of years, I have found myself becoming far more familiar with the SEC than ever thought possible, which is why it's beyond ironic that one of their goals is to provide disclosures. Yes, they don't need to abide by their own rules. This is from Stuart Adderley. The Biden EO estimates that 40 million Americans own crypto today. No thanks to the SEC, who insist on saying that all and most tokens are securities and that U.S. exchange are running unlawful security exchanges. If you ask which ones, no comment, no disclosure. I'm just walking you guys through the information they're sharing, their predictive programming, you showing what's coming. There's going to be massive regulation coming for exchanges. That is how they're going to control the cryptocurrency market. They won't be able to get to all these decentralized exchanges or decentralized platforms, but you sure as hell probably will not be able to get your money through these decentralized platforms. Or how will you move that money? Maybe you can move it on the off marketplace. I don't know. But the goal is to pick the winners and losers, to look at these investments just like all the billionaires and multimillionaires do, as long-term plays, fundamentals, real world solve, leadership teams, marketing teams, okay? We see Coinbase is all about the regulation. They're diving into it because they know if they don't get on board, they know if they don't get on board, they're part of the banking cartel in the cryptocurrency space. So I'm trying to help you guys understand that you have to get into the billionaire and multimillionaire mindset and say, okay, I'm looking long-term for my family. This isn't about Ferraris and million-dollar homes. This is about shifting the future of your family's wealth. And once you shift the future's family wealth, you need to hold on to that. Investing is very, very boring if you do it correctly. It is not exciting. It is not sexy. It is boring, consistent, and methodical. The key is to get out of your head and down into your heart space. This is where the wealth will come from. If I can really help you understand of getting out of your heart and into your head and connecting your heart-brain coherence, we're going through the Great Awakening Bootcamp that starts today. We closed it last night. We have close to like 125 people going through this bootcamp with me and Waters Above. We're teaching you how to get out of your head, the created I am, into the great I am. If you can get into your heart and create that internal vibration, you become a frequency field. Okay, this is what they did. They got us out of our heart into our ego. And when you're operating out of ego, they can control you back and forth. It's that simple, warriors. I am giving you the secret to life. If you can get back into your heart space, however that represents for you, it could be God, it could be Buddha, Allah, whatever it represents for you. But if you can get out of your head and into your heart and create the frequency and the feeling, you can become whatever you want. My name is Coach JB. I am the top health, mindset, and crypto coach in the world. I believe in my heart. I think in my mind. I verbalize it to you, and it becomes my reality. If I can see it in my mind, I can always end up holding it in my hand. What I repeatedly do gets ingrained in my subconscious mind. What gets ingrained in my subconscious mind is what you're seeing here in the current reality. I love you guys. I appreciate you from my heart. My family's to yours. Let's get after it. Warriors, let's get your shit together. Let's go.